Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the June 26th City Council meeting. First thing we'll do is stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can we get a roll call, please, Christy?
Bierstead. Here. Downing.
Here.
Gunn.
Here.
Morset.
Here.
Odine.
Here.
Page.
Here.
Watson.
Here. Okay, next we have approval of minutes from the June 12th regular meeting, workshop meeting, and closed session.
I move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then we'll have the approval of the bills with Mr. Morissette.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I move approval of the bills in the amount of $1,381,925.58, subject to the Comptroller.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we move on to public comments. Before we have any public comments, there's a little statement I'd like to read real quick for everybody. Over the weekend, there was a report of 2 acts of vandalism in the city. Police Chief Gordon Young reached out to both families to share our concern with them and to let them know that the police department is investigating these reports. The police department and the city both take these acts of vandalism very seriously, and we want to assure our citizens that this is not who we are as a city. We are a safe and welcoming community that supports all of our citizens. Thank you very much. Okay, next we move on to public comments. If there's anybody in the audience has anything they'd like to stand and talk about? Otherwise, we'll move on. First thing we're going to have is a report from the library board. The board president, Joyce Breen, is going to be here, and with her will be a new library director, Tanya. Nope, Tanya's not here. Oh, yeah, she is here.
Yes,
Are you going to stand up and talk to us too, or is Joyce going to do all the heavy lifting?
Chris is there to back her up.
Well, yeah.
Yes, I'm Joyce Breen, Library Board President, and I'm here to talk about the hiring process and then to introduce Tanya, the new library director, to you. And so, Mayor Tolan, council members, city staff, thank you for inviting us here tonight. The process began. Oh, I want to introduce another board member. Would you stand, Rebecca? Rebecca Ferguson is our vice president. And of course, Chris is a representative to the board. The process began in December of 2017 when Nancy Miller, the director for the last 17 years, announced her retirement. Then in January, she announced a date to us, which was May 25th. And so at that January meeting, Karen Bergstrom, Human Resources Director, had been notified, and she attended the meeting and talked a little bit about the hiring timeline. And of course, under Wisconsin law, the library boards have the authority to hire the library director. At the February meeting, Karen Bergstrom outlined the process of hiring a library director. And may I say, at this point, a big, hearty thank you to Karen. She did a wonderful job of helping us, and we appreciate it so much. We also appointed Bob Wing from the board as a liaison to the staff because we wanted to know, we wanted their input. And so he met with them and he gave his report to us. After the February board meeting, a hiring subcommittee was formed, which was Karen, Rebecca Ferguson, Vice President, Melissa Wilson, Library Board, Kim Kiskinen from the library staff, and myself. The library director job was posted on February 28th with a closing date of March 28th. And the job was posted on the following places, including the City of River Falls and library website at a cost of $1,166.90. The hiring subcommittee met to work out the details of the hiring timeline and process in March. We met a couple of times, had lunch together, and worked very well together, I must say. And then Karen and Melissa drafted some interview questions. And after March 28th, we had received 18 applications for the position. And the hiring subcommittee got together and selected 8 applicants for Skype interviews, which we did on Wednesday, April 18th. We also added Monica LeBold, who is our youth services librarian, added to the Skype interviews because she was intending to be for the in-person interviews, but she had a family wedding, and so we invited her to take part in the Skype interviews. 3 of the 8 applicants were selected by the hiring subcommittee for the in-person interview on May 4th. And this interview included 3 panels with library board members, City of River Falls staff, library staff, and a foundation member. And this was scheduled in the morning. For lunch, the city administrator, the hiring subcommittee, and the applicants had lunch together. And in the afternoon, an inbox exercise was given to the applicants where they had an hour to prepare. And the interview panel, by the way, is listed. I won't read all their names, but we were in 3 different panels with 3 different subjects, and the applicants appeared before each one. The inbox exercise you probably are familiar with, but it's an exercise requiring reading, comprehension, judgment, decision-making, organization, planning, as well as perception and analytical ability. They were given 16 questions and asked to complete them, and which Tanya was the only one that actually did complete all 16 of them. There are examples, and I think these are kind of interesting. These are 2 examples of the exercises that were given. They were typical and or extraordinary. First of all, there was one, like you got a call at 8:05 from HR, and none of the library staff time cards had been approved and submitted to ESS. Payroll needed to be processed by 10 a.m. that morning. If you want your employees to get a paycheck, you must approve time entries by 10 a.m. Well, what do you do? So she came up with the answer for her. And then another one would be like 2 library aides stop in your office. They were asked to try new methods of processing books, and they both became upset about the new method. Said the old way worked great, and it was the way it had always been done. And they were longtime employees and had not been open to change since you started the job. They are threatening to turn in their letters of resignation if they can't go back to the old way of doing things. What do you do? So there were 16 of those types of questions. At the end of the in-person interviews, the library board gathered feedback from the Library Foundation representative, the library staff, and the city staff. And they all leaned toward Tanya as the best candidate. Then on Monday night, on May 7th, the library board convened in closed session to discuss which candidate would be offered the position. A decision was made, unanimously I must say, to call Tanya with an offer pending checking references and background check. Karen Bergstrom called Tanya on May 9th, Wednesday, and by phone, and she accepted. And now I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Tanya, and then I'll introduce her. She began working as a police officer directly after graduating from Wisconsin and getting her BA. She did that for 11 years. And then in 2001, she began working as a library assistant in the Appleton Public Library, which, by the way, is the largest freestanding library in the state of Wisconsin. Huge operation. In 2006, she received her master's degree of library information and science. And then in 2011, she became the head of Children's Services Department at the Appleton Public Library. And that's for the last 7 years. And I just want to read a bit from her portfolio. She says she became a librarian not because she loved books or movies or music, though she does, but because she loves people, communities, and their stories. There is no other career that she would rather have than public library leadership. And so I introduce you to Tanya Misselt, our new library director.
Hello, Mayor Toland and council members and staff. I have prepared a 45-minute presentation. Oh, you guys are too quick. Seriously, sometime if you'd like me to present about 21st century libraries, I would be happy to do that. It's really very different. The traditional library is not really what we currently are doing anymore. I just want to tell you that I am just so happy to be here. I love your community. I love the natural environment. I have been so fortunate to inherit such an incredible library. The building is beautiful. The staff are incredible. I have had such a warm welcome from the city employees, and I'm just really grateful to be here. I've had a crash course in budgeting, and so I'm just kind of getting my feet wet, and I don't have a whole lot other to tell you than I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome. Yep, welcome. It's great to have you. Okay, so next we'll move on. We're going to close the council hearing and open up a public hearing on Ordinance 2018-07. This would amend Chapter 15.12 of the Municipal Code related to electrical contractor licenses. This ordinance would remove the requirements for electrical contractors to obtain a city electrical license, as contractors are now required to be licensed by the state of Wisconsin. Does anybody in the audience have anything like to say about this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and we will open up the council hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve ordinance number 2018-7, amending Chapter 15.12 of the Municipal Code.
Questions or comments?
I have one quick question. Although I know this is just for cleaning up the code itself, does the state, and this hasn't been done since 2013, licensing within the city, but does the state reimburse the city for lost revenue now
Is there any lost revenue?
from licensing for the?
Julie?
The state does not reimburse the city for lost revenue.
I was wondering about that.
The city does not have any activity
No.
that they have to do either that they would be reimbursed for, so.
That's what I was wondering. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. There again, we'll close the council hearing and reopen a public hearing on Ordinance 2018-08 to amend Section 12.04.030 of the Municipal Code related to snow and ice removal. This change would remove the language that allows for a cost reduction if a snow removal violation hasn't occurred in the previous 3 years. Anybody in the audience have anything they'd like to say about this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and reopen the council hearing.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of ordinance 2018-08.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next move on to consent agenda. First, we have the acknowledgement of the following minutes. Police and Fire from 4:05, Utility Advisory Board from 5:21, the EMS Advisory Board from 4:02, the Park and Recreation Advisory Board from 5:16, the River Falls Housing Authority from 5:09, the Plan Commission from 6:05, and the Historic Preservation Commission from 5:09. Next one is a resolution authorizing the 2018 CHIP seal program. This would authorize the staff to retain St. Croix County for the 2018 program. Resolution approving 2017 compliance maintenance annual report. This would authorize the report and approve the report and authorize submission to the Department of Natural Resources. Next one is a resolution approving agreement between the City of River Falls and the Greenwood Cemetery Association. This would approve a 3-year renewal of a funding agreement for the Greenwood Cemetery Association. And the last one is a resolution approving bid for fencing and construction of the dog park out on County F. And this would approve the bid for the fencing. Does anyone want to pull anything?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull consent agenda items 7, 8, and 9.
Okay, anybody else? I'll take a motion on the rest.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve consent agenda items 5A through G and 6.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. Downey, you pulled number 7.
For those at home, BOD means biochemical oxygen demand. And I was wondering if we could have someone please explain to the public how the system operates and how it could restore the aeration quality from a B rating to an A rating. I believe it could be a simple process, and I was hoping we'd have someone here today who could explain it.
Councilmember Downing, we do. Ron Groth, our wastewater and water superintendent, is here tonight, and I would love to give the explanation, but Ron is here, and he is a little closer to that, so Ron can talk a little bit about BOD and his and I discussion already, how we're looking forward, as evidenced in our CIP, how we're going to handle that situation that you referred to. So, Ron?
Evening. Yeah, as you said, it's biochemical oxygen demand, and easy way to remember it is basically the organic material that comes into the plant. That's what creates the loading, and the oxygen comes into play because bacteria need to use oxygen to break down that organic material. So we have to provide so many pounds of oxygen for every pound of BOD that comes in. I guess like Kevin said, how we're addressing it, if you remember last year when we talked about it, we were thinking, well, we know we're outperforming our design loading. So we're going to take a look at our plant again and see if that design loading from 1977 was correct. Well, in a lot of areas we've done better, but the one hang up yet was our aeration system on our oxidation ditches. It won't deliver enough oxygen to satisfy fairly stringent DNR code, to qualify for that higher rating. So we have to look, how can we get more oxygen into that water? And that's the next step in the process here, and that's where the CIP comes in. We've already done some preliminary work. It looks like the best option is going to be a diffused aeration system. So basically, instead of those big paddles on top of the tank, you'd have buried grid of diffused aerators that would receive air through a blower system, and that would just disperse it through a piping system and then diffusers with membranes. But it's a lot more efficient. What we're looking at now is right now we're about 120 horsepower on the two aerators we have. The system we're going to, we're looking at a 50 horse blower with two 7.5 horse submersible mixers. So we'd almost cut our horsepower in half and deliver more oxygen, get us back up to, satisfying what engineered design needs to be.
I think the
We
answer.
identified this, obviously, before. We knew this was an issue, and that's why it got on the CIP originally, or?
Right, so we've been looking at this since, into last year, before the last compliance maintenance annual report. And it's probably coming on a little bit quicker than what we anticipated. The loadings are increasing, but, that goes with the economy. More houses getting built, there's more kids coming to school, all that stuff, that just increases our loading. I mean, it's a good thing. It shows we're growing, but we just need to keep adapting, so.
Thank you.
Some good news is physically we have two tanks and we're only using one tank right now. So physically we're good. It's just the oxygen introduction. And when Ron says organic material and BOD, here I'll simplify that. It's what you flush down the toilet, putting enough oxygen into it to make it break down.
Okay.
So, and just kind of elaborate on what Kevin said there, I don't want to confuse it at all with what our effluent is. Our effluent, we're well below permitted levels. The plant is outperforming engineered design. So we still are, and we still, like Kevin said, we have another ditch we can throw online yet if we have to, so.
Okay. Thanks, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
For approval of consent agenda item number 7.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
And you pulled number 8.
Yep. Resolution approving agreement between the Cedar River Falls and the Greenwood Cemetery Association. This is kind of a morbid question, but I was kind of curious why there was an uptick in revenue, and I'm guessing that more people aren't passing away. Are there more pre-purchased plots, I guess is my question, or is there something that, like banks incentivizing pre-purchased ones through life insurance? Has something changed that would show why there's been an uptick?
Julie probably answers. As far as I know, it's just from
I
all the...
I don't have a good answer to that. I know they're selling more lots, but we don't know if it's future or current need.
Okay.
So, if you need an answer to that question, Jim Larson was unable to be here tonight, but he could be at the next meeting, or I could get back to you on that.
Because the amount it was almost like half more. It was a significant amount. That's why I'm asking. So.
And I had talked to Jim a little bit this morning when I was up there, and he was saying they've really looked at their labor, and they've really cut back on that, so that's helped a lot. And their investments are seem to be going really well too, so.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful cemetery.
One of the questions that I had for staff prior to the meeting was the number of lots that remained.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to hear, was it 1,200, Julie?
1,200.
So that, I was surprised that there's that many lots out there, so there's enough longevity left in that before we're full, so to speak.
Buy them up, they're going quick though.
Yeah. Don't
People are-
rush me.
People are dying to get in there. Sorry, I had to, it was so easy.
Mayor told me happy hour.
Sorry. Okay,
Mr. Mayor, I
John.
move for approval of consent agenda, item number 8.
Second.
questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and number 9.
Resolution approving bid for fencing and construction of the dog park. Well, yeah, I was really hoping that, the cat owners would also be represented, but I don't think that's going to happen tonight. But I like cats and dogs, so I'm excited about this. And I guess when I see contingency, does that mean we're going to be able to have a discussion about maybe putting a snack machine in for dogs and pop machine for people, and maybe some type of special type of things for real pet owners that would actually maybe generate a little bit of revenue?
Well, I think, and I'm not sure, but I think we're kind of counting on the people bringing their dogs out there to bring them snacks and foods, because we'd have to bring it out in the spring, take it out in the fall, and just more work, but I don't know.
Yeah, when I view contingencies in any kind of
Yeah.
construction
Yeah.
project, I always view that as unforeseen but accounted for changes that might happen during the construction period. So they run into rock at 2 feet and we've got to jackhammer down a couple of feet to put some footings in or something. That's really the contingency that I'm expecting. Mike's shaking his head, yes. That I'm expecting. I guess I would have to question vending machines for.
No.
Yeah, I was kind of visualizing this myself as just like any of the rest of our parks where people bring their own picnic baskets and,
Yep.
and their own stuff.
Because I like the idea that it's free for everyone, but I also like the idea of maybe recouping a little revenue by having stuff in there for pet owners that might have forgot, to bring a snack or something, or just need some water or pop.
Wasn't there going to be a fee for non-residents?
Yes.
There's a fee for non-residents.
there is a fee for
So it is revenue
non-residents.
generating.
So there's a little bit of that. It doesn't. And one thing, and I don't think it's addressed yet, is a fee for non-resident for just maybe one day. I know Nugget Lake Park does a $5 fee for one day. Something to think about, I guess. But yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval of item number 9 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Questions or comments?
We all got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ordinance and resolutions. Consideration of resolution approving the project plan and establishing the boundaries for the creation of tax incremental district number 13 in the city of River Falls. This resolution would approve the project plan and proposed boundaries for tax increment district number 13. And Sean Lentz from Eilers is here. Sean, you want to tee it up?
Let's see here. I've got a handout if we do. Can open. That makes sense. I believe we have it on here. Okay. We don't have the email, so it would take a little bit longer if I went this way, but.
Okay. Brant's we can hand this around. Try to get the brief overview up on the screen, but I do have a handout, so maybe I'll start. It was 8 under today, but
Way to go.
Not,
Way to go.
not thanks to me.
We're only
It
5.
was my teammates. Been working with Julie and Brant on the creation of a tax increment financing district in the city. And we've gone through a couple of steps in the process, including meeting with the other taxing jurisdictions called the Joint Review Board, including having a public hearing at the Plan Commission. And for District Number 13, we are now at the point of having it as a discussion for the City Council. What I'd like to do is, at the start of this, and I know this is a repeat for many of you, Mayor, I know it is for you, but talk a little bit about how tax increment financing works, just as an introduction, and then mostly we'll talk about specific tax increment district number 13. So if you can turn into the page which states on the top, how does TIF, or tax increment financing, work? I wanted to just talk about some of the key elements as to how the city is able to use this as a tool to create additional tax base and development in the city. Step one in creating a tax increment district is choosing a boundary area, contiguous area within the city, and then we do a quick calculation of what the taxable value of property currently there is. And up on the screen that we now have available here on my slide before we do it electronically, that's called the base value of the tax increment district. The base value is currently taxed, and revenue from that goes to all the taxing jurisdictions. When the city creates a tax increment district, and I think, as you know, the city is tasked of all the government entities with really trying to promote development and redevelopment. So when they create a tax increment district, you're allowed to freeze the existing value in that area in terms of value that is taxed and goes to all the taxing jurisdictions. What you are then allowed, and this is the key of the tool tax increment financing, you are allowed to capture new tax revenue on value that occurs from the time you create the district to the time it closes. That's called the increment value. So again, what you're trying to do is, through public incentives and through public infrastructure, create new development in a particular area, and the state allows you to capture the new tax value that economic development is creating. And then when you get the tax revenue, all of the taxing jurisdictions share, you then have a revenue stream to pay for the expenses, really, to get that going in the first place, which again is typically infrastructure and incentives. Okay? So that's just a little bit about how TIF works. And on the second page, or the next page, I should say, on the handout, here is a list of the type of expenditures. I mentioned a couple: big picture incentive payments or cash grants, as well as utility improvements, infrastructure improvements, in environmental costs that could be involved with trying to develop or redevelop an area. Okay? All right, so let's transition then to the topic today, specifically district number 13. There are a couple different types of districts that you can create: industrial, mixed use, blight elimination, and rehab and conservation. The proposed District 13 is in the Whitetail Business Park, which I think you're all familiar with, and it really is targeted at promoting industrial development within the city. This type of district has a 15-year period where the city can incur costs and then charge those costs to that special fund that I was just talking about that comes from that increment value, taxes on that increment value. And then there's a 20-year maximum term for the district, and the term is the period where you're collecting taxes on that increment value and paying back the expenses that you incur to try to stimulate that development. This district in particular is for the most part, a overlay of an existing district that the city has had and was a very successful district, number 5, which was originally the Whitetail Ridge Business Park Tax Increment District. That district is outside of its expenditure period, though, now at this point. And as I'm sure the council is aware, there is property out there that has not yet developed. So this new district will give us the tool to really try to finish up the Whitetail Ridge Business Park. And as such, the primary tool is finishing that park and ongoing goal of promoting industrial development within the city. Now, how is that intended to be done? And I see we're almost there. Here we go.
Technology can be fun sometimes.
I really put you on the spot here, Brent.
I know, yeah. Why doesn't
I should have saved all my jokes for now.
just for now?
Okay, all right, we could. All right, on that next page, the specific TID 13 review, oh, here we go. There we go. Thanks, Brant. Thank you very much. What you see up there is, in the blue lines, is representative of the new boundaries for District Number 13. The city is allowed to do projects within that area and charge them to this fund, and potentially projects within a half mile of that area as well. And so on there, you'll see a list of projects. I'll highlight a couple of them. Some incentives or cash grants are a potential cost to promote the development on this site, as well as infrastructure improvements, utilities on the Paulson Road. We do have some potential property acquisition that is within a half mile. And overall, we have a budget including any interest expense for advances from other city funds or from any sort of borrowing to pay for these project costs of about $5.4 million. And as I mentioned, typically when the city has to finance these costs, they do it using two approaches. Occasionally the use of debt, but also because of your past history of very good planning and financial management, the city can do internal loans and do a loan from, say, the general fund to the tax increment district. And then as the district successfully completes its objectives, it pays the general fund back with interest, which is a win-win all-around approach. We're hoping to see about $17.5 million in new development in this area upon completion of the goals of tax increment district number 13. To finish up, was it just enter? Yeah, there we go. As I'd mentioned previously, we did have an initial meeting of the Joint Review Board. The other taxing jurisdictions do have a say in the creation of districts and are part of the process. We also did the Plan Commission public hearing and have completed that step. They unanimously recommended moving TID 13 forward for council review this evening. That action is, excuse me, is for your discussion then, following my presentation. And in August or September, we did have another district that's not on the agenda tonight. We expect that to come forward to the council again for discussion. And we do expect the final meeting of the Joint Review Board to follow that tax increment district number 14 discussion. And then ultimately, before the end of October, all of the necessary paperwork will be submitted to the state, and that's really the final step in the process. Bringing it back to this evening, there's a resolution for the council approving the boundaries and the project plan. If there's any questions that you have that I can be helpful with that, I'd be happy to answer that. Hopefully, most got covered in the presentation, but again, if there's anything that's come up generally about tax increment financing or about this district specifically, I'd be happy to answer those questions.
Sean, I do have a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Sean.
Go ahead.
With the land, I just thought about this when you mentioned the land acquisition. Does the land acquisition then affect the base value, and then are we able to use whatever's generated off that land acquisition into the increment, or is that just acquiring the land? Does it come into that district? Is my point.
I understand. Yep.
Or does it we would have to amend the Sterling Ponds TID to capture that land?
Yep. The land that's in the project plan right now is a acquisition of land outside of the boundaries of the district. So if development occurred on that land, it would not provide revenue specifically to this district.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
So in order to capture that revenue, we'd have to amend the Sterling Ponds TID,
Yes.
then add it in, because it has to be contiguous in order for us to amend the TID?
Yeah, if we added land to any of this district or any of the city's districts, it does have to be contiguous with the existing district
Okay.
itself. Correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Excuse me.
I have 3 questions. One is, will we be issuing tax incremental revenue bonds?
I don't foresee that for this district.
Okay. And will we be issuing utility revenue bonds?
I don't think we're going to do that for this district.
All right. And my last one is, will we be issuing special assessment B bonds potentially?
That's not expected.
Okay. Perfect. That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Maybe just to piggyback on that, the projects that are in the plan allow the projects to be charged to the tax increment district if the city wishes to do that. But they are not projects, and this kind of goes to the question about the types of debt instruments that you use. The projects themselves, though, will all come back to you for your approval individually, just because they're in the plan. And I've had this question come up at a couple of meetings, so I thought it might be good to reiterate that. Just because they're in the plan doesn't mean you have, as a council, approved the projects. What you're doing is you're saying that if we do decide to proceed with these projects, they can be tax increment eligible to be paid for. That's really what the plan puts into place.
Maybe silly question, but where does the $17,500,000 come from?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. So if we, you have that map in the handout that I had. If a business comes to the city and says, we'd like to locate here, we're going to need a few things in order for that to happen, you negotiate with them and come up with a development agreement. If they construct a new building, that building creates new increment value or taxable value, that would be the 17.5 million.
But we're speculating on what that makeup will be at this point.
Yes, the plan includes projects and incentives that we would expect would be potentially needed in order to incentivize development to occur and build there. And the development itself, there is nothing imminent that's going on, but yes, from this point then you would have this tool to use to help try to make that happen.
And there probably will be, it's possible that you will see something in the next couple months come for one of these lots in Whitetail.
Okay.
That's why we're bringing this tonight for approval.
Is that a conservative number or an aggressive number, I guess, in terms of value?
Yeah, I think
value?
looking at the success of the existing district there and the available property yet, I think I would say it's kind of in the middle, given what we've seen already on that site, that we certainly think it's achievable.
Okay.
Yep.
And those are, when we do a developer's agreement, those are minimum, they commit to a minimum value.
right.
Of course, if they're assessed higher than that, then we
Great.
we
Right.
enjoy that. So
Sure.
if they assess lower, they're committing to the minimum value, so we can come fairly close, I
Okay.
think. I'm confident we can.
Yeah, and the key, and Julie can speak to this too, the key with tax increment districts, the planning is very important. The implementation is the most important element.
Right.
And what you're trying to do is match up expenditures to really promote development with the development and the revenue stream from the development, so that then creates the revenue that pays for those costs. And as Scott just mentioned, the development agreement and getting commitments of certain values being created in the property is vital to that, to make sure those two elements, revenue and expenses, are matching.
Self-sustaining revenue stream for itself then, right?
Yes, that is the goal, is to not be using in the long run or subsidizing from other funds of the city. Use this tax increment district 13 fund to, in the long term, provide the revenue to pay those costs back.
Good. That's why I asked those 3 questions.
Yep.
Anybody else have anything for Sean? Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Council.
Entertain a motion on that?
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the resolution approving the project plan and establishing the boundaries for and the creation of tax increment district number 13.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next one is a resolution approving purchase agreement for property on West Division Street. This resolution we'd sell the property to Gerard LLC for $200,000, and we would authorize the city administrator or a designee to finalize its sale.
Motion?
Yeah.
I move approval of the resolution approving purchase agreement for the property on West Division Street.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next would be a resolution recommending award for the 2018 through 2020 directional boring contract. This would approve the bid for the 2018-2020 boring contract project to TD&I Cable Maintenance Incorporated.
I got a question for Kevin, if I may. Sure. Well, I move for the approval.
Yeah, let's
Of number
get the
12.
motion first.
Second.
Okay, go ahead.
So my question is I was at the utility board meeting and you kind of spoke about both of these as they approved them. Can you kind of differentiate why you're doing it separately and what benefit that is to the city?
Sure. In our bid package, there was two separate portions. We have a bunch of various projects throughout the city where we've identified to be bored. And then we have one specific project down Winter Street that's more of a standalone type projects. We separated those out. When the bids came in, we were, not one company bid low on both portions. So on that one, on the Winter Street portion, you'll see in the next resolution, Push Inc. came in, I think, about 80,000 under TD&I Cable, who got this first portion. So we went with Push Inc. for the second portion. So two separate portions of that bid, and those companies bid that based on their availability and resources and the timing. So,
They both bid on both of them?
yes, they both bid on both, and they were
Interesting.
flipped, yes, so.
Yeah, well, I'd love to commend the utility staff on catching that and making sure that we're being wise with the ratepayers' money.
And
Fantastic
when those
job.
bids came in too, we were a little skeptical at first, but we researched it. We thought maybe they had forgot the conduit or something, but it was all there, so,
Yeah.
thanks.
Kevin?
So Kevin, I just, and I should have asked this earlier, I apologize.
Okay.
We had, in CIP, we had 175,000 budgeted for this,
Mm-hmm.
and it looks like we're about nine grand over. It does mention that they'll be funded by other specific departments for different things, but are we gonna have a budget adjustment, Julie, or will that be something we'll clean up later, or how are we gonna pay for that?
Yeah, because some of that is going to be for fiber optics, so I'm assuming there'll be a small portion in there for fiber, Julie, I'm not sure what.
Yeah, I think we'll probably bring that back later
Yeah,
once
okay,
things
it's fine.
shake
It's
out.
$9,000.
Because some of that fiber is actually could be for water department,
Yeah.
it could be for IT,
For skate and
other
stuff.
things, so.
Yeah, okay.
So that'll
Thank you.
get pretty close to our utility budget, and then there'll be a small portion spread out amongst other departments for some of the fiber optic portion.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next one is a resolution recommending award for the 2018-2019 Winter Street directional boring contract. This would approve the bid for Push Inc., as Scott had mentioned.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of number 13.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next move on to administrator's report. If Julie's got anything for us, or anybody's got anything for Julie?
Anything outside of what's in the report, but I can answer any questions.
Julie, did we get in our taxi back?
Our taxi that was in the accident?
Yep.
No, that one went
So are we
to
still
the
out?
salvage yard.
Wait, are we still out though?
We have placed an order for a replacement taxi. I haven't heard lately on what the timing is on that.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll get it soon.
So people still need to plan accordingly?
They do.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Thank you.
I got one thing, the July 10th city council meeting, that's supposed to be on July 10th. We're going to cancel that, so there won't be any meeting on July 10th. The next council meeting will be on July 24th. So, just so everybody knows. Anyways, so anything else for Julie? Otherwise, we'll move on to Comptroller's report.
This is the Comptroller's report for May 2018. General fund revenues through the end of May were $4,257,127 and included $8,400 in liquor license revenue and $18,654 in building permit fees. Expenditures for the same period were $3,705,295, or 37% of budgeted, for a net of revenues over expenditures of $551,832.
Thanks, Diane. And there will be no closed session tonight, so that's it.
Move for adjournment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
I wasn't sure if that was a question, Mr. Bierstadt?
Okay, yeah.